The city of New York, the state of New York has the power to close a park based on their view that it would be helpful in defeating the pandemic. Absolutely no question about that. The Supreme Court has case after case after case saying that public health justifies closing down parks, closing down public areas. The next question is, does the governor have the right to do that? Governors generally are not authorized to make the law. They're authorized to enforce the law. So you'd have to look to see if there were legislative authority allowing the governor to close the park. If there is, then it would be legitimate. Let me put it very clearly. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread a disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open up your business.
Wait, can I stop you? No right not to be vaccinated? Meaning if they decide you have to be vaccinated, we have to be vaccinated?
Absolutely. And if you refuse to be vaccinated, the state has the power to literally take you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm. If the vaccination
Where is that in the Constitution?
If the vaccination is designed to prevent the spreading disease. If the vaccination is only to prevent a disease that you will get, for example, if there's a disease that will kill you, you have the right to refuse that, but you have no right to refuse to be vaccinated against a contagious disease. Public health, the police power of the Constitution, gives the state the power to compel that. And there are cases in the United States Supreme Court. Case that pops into my head, I may have the name wrong, is Jacobson. I think probably I have it right. Check it out. You'll see that there are cases after cases after cases that the public health permits reasonable actions to prevent the spread of communicable diseases. Most of them grow out of tuberculosis cases in the early 20th century, but some are more recent than that. But there's still an issue of whether the governor has the authority to create laws, and that's a matter of state legislation. Yeah.
But you've opened up a whole new area here. So the governor has the right, or sorry, the government has the right to force someone to be vaccinated. But how do we know what they're providing us from a medical standpoint is accurate? There are doctors who argue that Anthony Fauci is totally wrong in his assessment, and it certainly seems like week to week, month to month, they don't seem to know anything about this virus.
I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a lot. I wrote an article early on pointing out two fundamental errors right away. But that's what a democracy is about. And if the majority of the people agree and support that for public health measures, you have to be vaccinated, you have to be vaccinated. They should give you an alternative. The alternative is to live in your home, don't get vaccinated, but never, ever leave your home or live in a bubble. But if you want to interact with other people, you cannot become Typhoid Mary. The Constitution doesn't give you the right to spread your illness to other people. And you can disagree, you can be a dissenter, you can leave the country, you can go into a bubble. But what you can't do is say, I don't disagree, I don't agree with Fauci, therefore I'm going to take the law into my own hands and decide to spread the disease. That's not a constitutional right. Sorry.
But Professor Dershowitz, how can you support a law that's made on the determination by a doctor? If you went to the doctor today and he determined that we need to chop off your leg, wouldn't you get a second opinion before you went and did what that doctor said?
I wouldn't have him. I wouldn't even listen to that doctor. We're not talking about it based on a doctor. We're talking about it based on a legislature, based on the legislature's decision being upheld by the highest courts and by the Supreme Court. We're talking about democracy. Doctor doesn't make the decision. The decision is made by the government through democratic means. And if the decision is made by the government, if they told you you had to cut off your leg, that would be unconstitutional because your leg doesn't help them. Let's assume the doctor says to you, unless you cut off your leg, you'll die. You have a right to die. You don't have to cut off your leg. But if the doctor says, unless you cut off your leg is contagious and will spread your disease to many, many, many other people, that's a completely different issue.
Yes, but
Constitution.
if this legislation is based on the determinations made by doctors, and they've determined something about, we're mixing the fields of medicine and law, and the proof of something in law seems vastly different than the proof of something in medicine. A lot of the people who are advising us as to the future of vaccinations in this country are the very same people who have been kicked out of major countries for serious failures and injuries resulting from vaccines that they felt were going to be beneficial. I'm very troubled by the legality of what you're suggesting, because it seems like we're very close to a government mandate that we must all be vaccinated. Let me take you in another direction here.
I would like to see a government mandate. If a safe vaccine is developed for COVID-19, I hope it's mandated, and I will defend it and will argue that in the Supreme Court of the United States against your views.
And you would get it if they came out tomorrow and said there's a vaccine that's ready?
First one online, my children would get it, everybody would get it. If we felt it was safe, we'd make our own, obviously, make our own judgment. If we decided to become civil disobedience and violate the law, that would be a different thing, but the law would be completely valid.
I know you have limited time, so let me ask you about this other professor at Harvard, Charles Lieber. He's been indicted. Sorry?
Never heard of him.
Oh, Charles Lieber is one of the world's leading experts in nanotechnology. He has been indicted along with two of his Chinese students who, well, let me just bring you up to speed.
Sure.
Two of his Chinese students who failed to declare on their student visa applications that they were members of the Chinese military. Dr. Lieber's group, in their research in the area of nanotechnology, have created robots that are smaller than viruses, that can actually enter cells and carry out functions within the cell. And we have the very realistic possibility, Professor Dershowitz, that there are nanotechnology groups around the world, and actually a high concentration of them at Harvard University, that are creating these nanobots that could behave exactly like a virus and could even mimic some of the symptoms and impact that we're seeing from COVID-19. So I'm very concerned when the law can get behind this and force us to take a vaccine for something that's so misunderstood from a medical standpoint.
Well, I want to make sure it's well understood, and I don't think we'd ever get legislation passed unless there was a very, very widespread consensus across the board. Remember how hard it is to get legislation enacted in this country. You got to get the House of Representatives. You got to get the Senate to approve the same language that the House approves. You got to get the president to sign the bill. Then you got to get the courts to uphold it. Once all of those checks and balances have been satisfied, that's the democracy we live in. And, if you don't like it, there are other places you can go to.
Not really. They won't let us leave New York. Let me ask you this, because
you can leave New York. You can leave New York. If you tell them you want to give up your American citizenship and go to another country, you can leave New York. Yeah.
Let's stay focused on this research for a second.
Right.
So in this visit to Harvard, we've got Jeffrey Epstein wearing this sweatshirt. It seems like this is the same room, the same sweatshirt, the same day. We've got Marvin Minsky here, who is a world-renowned, he's deceased now, but he was a world-renowned expert in artificial intelligence and robotic haptics.
Epstein, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like Jeffrey Epstein was very involved in some of these leading scientists at Harvard, and he has been accused by many of using sexual blackmail against people. So when I hear about...
I've never heard of that. I've never heard that claim made.
Well, there are alleged to be video recordings of people from the jet.
I hope there are video recordings of everything that Jeffrey Epstein ever did with anybody, because that would be my best evidence. Look, he was friendly with Frank Church, who was the developer of the genome project. He was friendly with so many scientists. He fooled a lot of people into thinking that he had lived a perfectly normal life. And we were all, I can speak for myself, totally shocked when we learned about some of the activities. and he was friendly with Bill Gates. He was friendly
Right.
with.
But the fact is, he engaged in these activities, and Bill Gates seems to be connected to each of the people that I'm speaking about: Charles Lieber, Marvin Minsky, millions and millions of dollars to Harvard.
I've never met Bill Gates. Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that you've met Bill Gates. I'm just saying that Jeffrey Epstein has met Bill Gates.
Sure.
In the book Filthy Rich by James Patterson, he says that Jeffrey Epstein had a trading floor on his 727 jet. Now, of course, that's going to mean there's just a computer data center there. I don't know if James Patterson would necessarily know a trading floor from a video server, but there are allegations that Jeffrey Epstein recorded things that happened all over his house. There's been a former...
I hope so. That would be great. Yeah.
Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy who has produced video footage allegedly to have come from Jeffrey Epstein. And I mean, we're hearing about nanotechnology developed by Harvard scientists that could enter a cell, behave like a virus. We've got Bill Gates pushing this plan for a virus. We've got him funding Anthony Fauci, the CDC, the NIH, the WISP.
Sounds like a theory involving a dead man who probably...
Well, it sounds more like a conspiracy, because here we've got two people. How did Jeffrey Epstein get this $500 million fortune? Charles Ortel tells us there's no records of him conducting any trades at all. He never graduated from college as far as we know, but yet he was a professor at Dalton School, allegedly hired by Donald Barr, the father of our current Attorney General. Can you address the relationship between Donald Barr and Jeffrey Epstein?
Never heard anything like that. I didn't know Epstein when he was teaching at a high school or an elementary school. I mean, these are all absurd conspiracy theories. Epstein made his money by working for Leslie Wexner. You should ask Leslie Wexner how he made his money. He got a percentage, as far as I know, of all the money that he handled for Leslie Wexner. And then I know he got the house that Leslie Wexner had once owned. There's a dispute about how much he paid for it and all of that. But his money came, I think, largely from Leslie Wexner. That's what the evidence seems to show.
Right. Donald Barr was the headmaster at Dalton School. He left right before Jeffrey Epstein joined as a professor. It's notable that he...
You mean a high school teacher?
High school teacher, sorry. A math professor, a high school teacher, whatever we want to call him. But he didn't have a master's degree in teaching. A lot of people have a lot of questions about what this relationship...
He never went to, I mean, I'm not sure he ever met this Barr guy, but I know that he didn't have a college degree, and he was a very brilliant guy, very smart guy, very good at mathematics, but you have to ask the right people those questions. Ask the people from the Dalton School why they hired him. Ask the people from Bear Stearns why they hired him. There's a lot of mystery around Jeffrey Epstein, but the idea that he would be dealing in nanotechnologies with Marvin Minsky. Marvin Minsky was the developer of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think he was dealing with artificial intelligence. With Minsky, it would have been Charles Lieber with nanotechnology. Along the lines of the surprises, were you as surprised as everybody else when Alexander Acosta announced publicly that he was instructed to lay off Epstein because he was involved in intelligence?
It was not true. There's no truth to it. Epstein was not involved in intelligence, and I don't think that anybody in the government ever told him to lay off Epstein. Nobody laid off Epstein. We got the deal because we had a stronger case. They couldn't prove that he had ever transported any particular woman in interstate commerce who was underage for purposes of sex. And so if you can't prove that, you can't make your case. I do think I've only met Acosta one or two occasions. I do think he got a bum rap. I think he did what he could do. He got the best deal he could possibly get. If he had demanded more, we would have gone to trial and probably would have gotten a total acquittal.
Right. And so Jeffrey Epstein, despite his close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, you're saying unequivocally was not involved in CIA, Mossad, nothing like that?
No, of course not. He had no connections to the Mossad. He had no connections to the CIA. He had no connections to intelligence. as far as I know. I mean, when I was his lawyer, he told me a great deal about things he had done, and he did totally deny that. If it was true, he would have bragged about it. He would have used it. He would have benefited from it. I don't believe it for a second.
But isn't it true that Robert Maxwell was a prominent Mossad asset, agent, something like this? He's alleged to have been.
He died years before any of this happened.
But he's always pictured with his beloved daughter, and she seems to be
Wouldn't you
good.
be pictured with your beloved daughter? I'm pictured with my beloved daughter. To make the connection between Maxwell's alleged connection to the Mossad and Jeffrey Epstein, I don't even know if Jeffrey Epstein ever met Maxwell.
Right. Well, there have been a lot of strange things that have happened with Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know if you saw this photo of her at an In-N-Out Burger in Los Angeles, but it appeared in the New York Post. And there were a number of problems with this from an evidentiary standpoint. This photo appeared in 2019, and I'm sure you're aware Ghislaine Maxwell is about 57 years old. This is quite obviously a retouched photo, and her complexion is not the only element of it that's been altered. When I brought this to the attention of the journalists at the New York Post and Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney, they all behaved very strangely. She's reading a book called The Secret Lives of CIA Operatives. When you go to Amazon.
Which attorney did you speak to?
Leah, what's her last name? She's in Ventura County. Leah, I forget her last name, but her information was on this photograph. She had taken the photograph, which the New York Post said was taken.
What's the relevance of the photograph? Let's assume it's a fake photograph. What does it show?
The New York Post is publishing a false story that seems to be, well, why is the question that I've been trying to ask. But when I asked that question, In-N-Out Burger threatened to sue me and threatened to bring criminal action against me, which I think is a violation of the California Code of Ethics.
How can they possibly sue for expressing an opinion or bring criminal charges for expressing an opinion?
Because I called In-N-Out Burger and spoke to their media representative and asked if they would provide video footage from their surveillance system to the FBI so that people could locate Ghislaine Maxwell. She was accused of all kinds of things, and this was right after Jeffrey Epstein had died. I would think that the FBI would want to question one of his closest associates, but instead, it seemed like the New York Post was publishing an article that was filled with strange errors, at least, if not deliberate lies.
For what reason? Because the Post is part of the conspiracy as well?
Well, now you seem like you're sort of making fun of what I'm saying, but I don't know the reason, Professor Dershowitz. I'm just telling you what happened. Ghislaine Maxwell was seen at an In-N-Out Burger just days after Jeffrey Epstein, her close accomplice and suspected intelligence operative, was found dead. She's reading a book called The Book of Honor, Secret Lives and Deaths of CIA Operatives. And when you go here to the Amazon.com book reviews, the first one is written by Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'm not making this up. You can call it a conspiracy theory if you like, but I believe this is a steganographic message that Ms. Maxwell has left here for someone.
She's reading a book, and then she writes a review of the book for Amazon. I do that all the time. When I read a book, I like
And
the
does
book.
it get published on the cover of the New York Post with a retouched photo that is alleged to be taken by a bystander that I have evidence it was taken by her attorney? And when I ask the reporters at the New York Post, they don't follow up with a correction. They hang up the phone on me.
You ought to report this to the proper authorities. I think we're really getting into conspiracy land. Do you have any other questions to me about something that I know something about?
I think that might be all the questions I have for right now. I thought these were things that you would know about. Thanks, Professor Dershowitz. Have a nice day. I'm sorry if he didn't like those questions, but those were the questions. Anyway, so there we go. I didn't have a lot of time to look at the comments here, but ending it by calling me a conspiracy theorist is not impressive. Appreciate Professor Dershowitz taking time out of his Saturday to join me. I think he might have known some more things about some of that stuff than what he was letting on. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do me a favor. If you like this interview, if you watch Crowdsource the Truth and you're not yet a sponsor, get onto subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I can't keep bringing you stories like this without viewer sponsorship. I don't think Fox News would allow me to ask Alan Dershowitz a lot of questions about what the hell is going on with the New York Post. I don't think CNN would. I don't think any corporate sponsor wants me to do this kind of thing. And also, social engineers out there are trying to stop you from seeing what I'm doing. So it's very important that people become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, everybody. Don't miss Sunday with Charles tomorrow.